Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to Spittin with Spitters. TJ Spitter here on an earlier time, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Before we get the show started, I just want to shout out to my sponsors. For all your CBD needs, go to Mom and Pop CBD Shop at 312 Town Center Boulevard in Forks Township. Stop going to the gas station for your CBD and go to Mom and Pop CBD Shop. For all your CBD needs, they have everything there that you could need. For all your vapor needs, go to Lehigh Vape at 822 Nazareth Pike. Tell them TJ sent you. They have everything there as well, from hardware to juice. They have a great staff that'll take care of you. Tell them TJ sent you. That's Lehigh Vape, 822 Nazareth Pike. Now to introduce my guest, I'm going to simply introduce you as a mother first because you wear so many hats. And we will get into them throughout the show. But Ms. Helen Davis-Carey, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It is a blessing that you would take time out of your busy day to be on the show, and I thank you wholeheartedly.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited.
I'm only going to ask you this one question, and it's going to get the ball rolling.
Yep.
You have such an empathetic love and passion for the addiction community and the recovery community. Can you share your story with us and explain how this came about?
Sure. So I'm a mom of three. I have three children, and I was lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband is a police officer in Union County. We were, would say we were pretty involved parents. My oldest son, did the DARE program in sixth grade, stood up there, said he was going to be drug free. He wanted to be a cop like his dad when he grew up. He went over to the middle school, and I noticed right away he started smoking. I could smell it on him. We don't smoke. So we got on him a little bit about that. In eighth grade, he was at a sleepover, and I got a phone call that there had been alcohol, and one of the kids had gotten sick. So we had to go and pick him up. And again, you ground him, you talk to him, you remind him of all the rules. And he went over to Warren Hills High School, and he wanted a little more freedom. He didn't want to be as involved in sports. He liked skateboarding. He wanted to hang out a little more with his friends. And we were okay with that because we knew all his friends. We, were involved in meeting their parents and setting our guidelines and all that. And the one day I picked him up from being at a friend's after school, and we were at dinner, and I got a phone call from one of the moms who he was just at this kid's house. And she said, Helen, I'm not mad or anything, but I wanted to let you know what went on today. And I was like, okay. And she said, well, the kids had a pill party. And I was like, well, what is a pill party? I didn't even know what that was. And she said, well, they took a bunch of pill prescriptions and they crushed them. And the reason why I'm calling you is because my son had gone and started having, his heart was feeling really awful, and he was sweating, and he got scared, told his sister what he had done, that they had snorted these pills, and it was my pill prescription. I had been prescribed oxycodone about 2 years prior. I broke my arm, and nobody had ever said it would be addictive, So I just said, oh, if my shoulder hurts me, if my arm hurts me, I'll just put the unused pills away in the cabinet. And unfortunately, Billy had taken them and brought them to this kid's house. And I was devastated. I couldn't believe that he would first know to do that and then take my pills and bring that to somebody's house. And we sat him down and we were telling him, Billy, do you realize that if that kid had died from that pill, that you would have been the cause of it? You could have been charged with murder, manslaughter, whatever. It was my pills. Your dad's a cop. All these ramifications of your one action really could have snowballed into something. And thank God this kid is okay and that you're okay. But we grounded him. We were really on top of him about where he was going, who he was hanging out with. And all throughout high school, he was struggling. He was in his room a lot. His grades were slipping to the point of he was sleeping a lot, getting migraines, throwing up. And I took him to the neurologist because I thought he was having migraines. And they prescribed him something. And by 12th grade, he was looking at like he wasn't going to graduate. And all I kept thinking of is like, oh my God, we're going to be this house where everybody knows that our son didn't graduate. Like I kept thinking of the stigma of not having that diploma and what that meant for his life. And I was like begging the teachers to like give him extra credit, helping him do the work, but not ever thinking anything else than he's just, misbehaving. Like he's just a typical teenager, doesn't want to bother with school, maybe has ADHD, he's not a college student, he'll be a mechanic, whatever. But then by May of his senior year, he went to a party and he came back and he had a bloody nose. And I was like, oh my God, Billy, what happened? And he was so pissed off at his friend that he just blurted out to me, so-and-so sucker punched me in the face because I owe him money. And I'm like, what do you mean you owe him money? Like, what is going on? And he said, Mom, I've been addicted to oxycodone from the minute I tried it 4 years ago. And this kid is stealing pills from his mom. His mom had back surgeries and unlimited pill supplies at her house. And he was supposed to be taking it to Warren Hills and selling it to his friends. But instead, being addicted, he had taken all the pills. And now this kid wanted his money and he owed him money. And I like couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Like my world just collapsed. And all I could think of is I got to confront this kid's parents. I got to stop, him getting these pills, not even thinking that my son had an addiction. Like I didn't even understand what addiction meant, what he was saying to me. I'm addicted to these pills. I don't have addiction in my family. Nobody that I knew of talked about addiction. And so that's kind of what I did. I focused on like calling that. I actually drove to this kid's parents' house. My husband had a heart attack during that time, so he couldn't go with me. But, I met with them and told them, and they were in denial too. They were like, not my son. And you could see the woman had back surgeries just by the way she was walking. And she admitted, I have all these pills, but I locked them up. And, my son's a good kid. And I'm like, well, my son's a good kid too. But this is like what's going on. This is happening. And if my husband was better, your son might be even getting locked up right now. But I don't want my son to have a police record. And I don't want to, I felt like they were just making a mistake, like cut the crap, stay away from my son. And if we don't, then the police might get involved. But I didn't want to ruin anybody's life with that. And she's like, my son, you passed it in the driveway. We bought him a brand new Audi. He's a good kid. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm just telling you, if he doesn't stay away from my son, then there's going to be a problem. And I felt like, okay, again, that's the end of it. Like no more pills, I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell his dad, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk to him. And, of course, Billy's like telling me I'm fine. I will, I know, I get it. I'm going to stop, I'm going to be good, whatever. I'm going to graduate. And he did, he graduated and we were thrilled. And he got a full-time job at ShopRite and he had a really nice girlfriend and things seemed to be going really well. So we thought, and then like money started going missing. And at first, like when I went into my wallet, I was like, well, maybe I didn't have $20. Maybe I spent it. But then I had like a couple $100 in my wallet. And I went and I looked and it was gone. And only Billy and his friend had been in the room around my purse. So after his friend left, I confronted him. And, I don't think kids realize that you have a tell and your parents kind of know what your tell is. And, Billy gets really mad and deny. But I knew, like, I could just tell that he was lying to me. And I was like, I'm going to call your friend and I'm going to blame it on him if you don't like tell me the truth. And he let me play it out. I called his friend, accused him, and I knew the whole time. And then, during that, he finally confessed. And again, he said to me, I can't help it. I can't stop, Mom. I'm telling you, I want to stop, but I can't. And so I was still like embarrassed, I guess. I still, because of the stigma, didn't want anybody to know. So I was kind of hiding it. So all I knew to do was to call our insurance. So I called our insurance and they suggested an intensive outpatient program. He could keep his job, but he could go there. So he was doing group. And again, we thought things were going well because he was going. And I went down in our basement one day and I noticed like my daughter's Wii system, all her games, the system, the guitar, all the things that she had gone. And I said to her, what's going on? Your stuff's gone. And she said, what do you mean it was there? And I looked at Billy and I'm like, what the hell? Where is her stuff? And he had pawned it all. So I said, that's it. Like, I'm meeting with your counselor. I don't get it. I thought you were doing good. And I set up a meeting and we all went in, and she said to him, Billy, like, what's going on? Be honest with us. Like, I thought you were doing good too. And he said, well, I was with friends and I was in group, and somebody said to me, what's cheaper than oxycodone? Heroin. And Billy was snorting heroin. And I like immediately started to cry, and I looked at the counselor and I was like, what do we do? Like, what do we do? I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to say. I can't believe that this is what I'm hearing. And I didn't even know, like, there was heroin in Warren County. I always thought of, like, we're far away, we're rural, we're away from all of that. And she said to me, well, I talked to Billy. I know he truly, truly wants to get help. We're going to put him on Suboxone. And she explained to me what Suboxone was. And so I picked up the prescription and I would lock it up in my husband's gun safe. And every day I would take it out and I would hand it to Billy, and I would physically watch him put it into his mouth. And I thought, like, I could control the situation that way. And I started getting, like, his paychecks put into my account, and I would drive his car with him to get gas. And I would, like, I was trying to control the situation. And of course, they're smart. But I thought, again, he was doing well. But now he's 18. So he turns 18 during this period. And so now the counselor doesn't have to tell me if he's failing his drug tests. So I have no idea that he's failing his drug test. And I'm thinking, in my little delusional state of wanting everything to be good, that he's okay. But then again, jewelry went missing, things went missing. And we did the tough love. My husband had it. He's got to be out of this house. Threw him out. And I was devastated because he's my baby and I don't want him on the streets. And he had gone to a friend's for a little while, and his sister was crying to me like, Mom, you say you love us, but yet you're throwing my brother out. Like, how do you do that to someone that you love? And I was, like, feeling really guilty and trying to be tough. And then Billy called me and he was like, my car broke down, and who's going to fix your car? Your friends aren't going to pay for you to fix your car. And he was like crying and begging me. And so, of course, I tell him that he can come home, but there's all these conditions, that he has to still be in group. He has to sign for us to know about his drug tests. We had an alarm put on our house at that time. Now I had locks on my bedroom door, so he couldn't get into our room. And so we were, like, living a nightmare. It was just constant me worrying about him and what he was doing, and fearful that maybe drug dealers were going to come to our house. I remember driving home one time and seeing the cops sitting out in an unmarked car, but I knew, I know the town cops, and I knew why they were watching our house. They must have found out that Billy was doing that. And it was just a constant stress. And, again, thinking he's doing good. And then again, something happens, money goes missing or whatever. And so I said, that's it, you're going to rehab. Like, I'm calling places, you're going. So I called a couple places, and Sunrise wouldn't take them because they don't detox off of Suboxone. So they weren't going to take them. Summit Oaks said, okay, just the intake, take them. So we called his job, told him that he had to take leave, packed his bags. He's willing to go. He wanted to get better. So we bring him there, and the nurse takes all the stuff in, they do the intake, and he comes back out with his bags. And I'm like, what the hell? You said you were willing to go. And he goes, no, I'm willing to go. And I looked at the nurse, and she said, oh, your insurance won't cover it. He's not sick enough. And I looked at her, and I'm like, he's doing heroin. Like, how is he not sick enough? Right. And she said, well, I'm sorry, they don't consider that, like a terrible thing to go through withdrawals, that he's just not that sick, that if you want to pay like $750 a night, he can stay. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of money. Right. So we went back to the Suboxone doctor, and I'm crying, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And she met with Billy, and he again was like, I want to get better. I want to get better. And she increased his Suboxone, and we brought him home, and again, tried to, like, support him as much as we could. And he was doing everything he was supposed to do. But then, again, we got a call from the prosecutor's office. My husband had gone to the police academy with one of the guys that worked there, and said, Bill, I got your son's driver's license here. When they go to the pawn shop, they take copies of their licenses to make sure it's not stolen goods. And I saw his name, and, I don't know what your son's into, but I wanted to let you know. And so immediately we knew what that meant. And I knew there was a local pawn shop down from us in Washington. And I drove down there, And the guy came out with this big book and all this jewelry. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to call the police if it was somebody else's jewelry, and it ended up just being my jewelry. So again, not wanting to press charges against my son,
Right.
I just confronted him about it and told him, I'm like, we're done. Like, this is it. This is the last straw. We can't live like this anymore. And he was at work and he was crying and he was like, I'm going to kill myself. I don't want to be out on the street. I really want to get better. I'm sorry. Like, he's pleading with me. And so I finally opened up to one of my friends and was crying. And she said, we'll take him to the emergency room. Like, he said he's going to kill himself. You know, they're going to have to help him if he said that. So he agreed when we drove up to Hunterdon, and he went in and said, you know, I'm going to kill myself. And the nurse sat down with him and was like, oh, that's like a really serious statement. Do you really mean that? And he said to her, well, I'm doing so much heroin that I think I'm going to die. And I like shook my head, and she said, I'm so sorry. Like, we don't detox off of heroin. If he was on alcohol, we could take you immediately and get him help, but we can't help him. So I was just at the point of like, I'm sorry too, because he's yours now. Like, I cannot bring him back home. I love him, but I can't help him. Like, I can't help him, and I can't live like this. And she got, you know, a social worker to come down, and they gave me some numbers to call and some different rehabs that we hadn't tried. So Billy and I went home and we called a bunch of places, and he got into a 14-day detox for the next day. So again, we told his job, told his girlfriend, packed him up. And he got into Princeton House. And then like during the weekends, they would have family meeting time. So my husband and I went and we sat in a group with Billy and a bunch of other kids. And I was like crazy. I wanted to know like which friends of his were using and where was he getting the drugs, and was his girlfriend really a good girl, and did he mean what he was saying, and like just like crazy. And one of the kids in group said, Mrs. Carey, I want to let you know that like Billy is so sweet and he really does want to get better. And he inspired me to want to get better. And I kind of like sighed of relief, like hearing those words. Yeah. And I looked at the counselor and he was like, no, yeah, your son really does want to get better, but he's only here for 14 days. And that's not enough to get off of heroin. Like, he has to go for longer, but unfortunately your insurance won't pay for any longer. And so my husband and I left, and I said, like, what are we going to do? And, you know, we called a couple places, and they had suggested this one place that would keep him for 28 days if we paid $10,000. So I ended up going to his grandmother and borrowing $10,000 from her. And Christmas Eve, we drove him up from Princeton House to a place up in PA, and we exchanged presents in the car, but they had said, you know, you can't stop anywhere. We're not going to take him. So you just have to go right there. And even though it was Christmas, he agreed to go because he did want to get better. So, you know, he called me Christmas and seemed kind of relieved that he was finally going to get the help that he wanted. And we went up every weekend. They would do like an NA meeting and then have family group. So we sat through that, and slowly, like, Billy was getting his coloring back. He was gaining weight. He was really Billy that I remembered. He was our Billy. And after the 28 days, we brought him back home. He did a different IOP. Was doing really well. He was doing his 90 meetings in 90 days. He got a sponsor. He would text me like pictures, like, because I didn't trust him 100%. Like, if he was going after the meeting somewhere and he was at the diner, he'd send me a photo, because I was like, are you really at the diner? Are you really, you know, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And over that period of time, he turned 20, and we were just so thrilled that he was doing everything that we took him up to the Red Wolf Inn for steaks. That was his favorite place. And I could tell like he was happy, but he wasn't like as happy as I thought he would be. And I said to Billy, like, what's going on? What are you thinking? And he said, Mom, this is a bar. And I was like, yeah, so, like, not understanding anything about addiction. And he's like, Mom, I really am not supposed to be around alcohol. And I was like, oh my God, like, I had no idea that was part of your recovery. And he kind of explained it to me. And I'm like, you have to talk to me about this, because I don't get it, but I would support you no matter what. Like, I don't have to drink if it's going to bother you. Like, I don't need to do that. And I just thought, how hard is that for a 20-year-old to be told, you know, you can't drink? He's not even 21 yet, you know. And then we had the conversations of like, who you hanging out with, because half of your good friend group is now on heroin. You know, how about calling this kid? He was always a good kid. And it was, well, he's 21. He wants to go out to bars. well, what about this friend? Well, he's in college and he smokes a lot of weed. So it really was hard on him. And I realized like, that's got to be like tough, but keep working your recovery, keep your community tight, do what you got to do. We support you. And over that period of time, one of his friends, a really good friend that was on heroin, ended up killing himself because he didn't have family support and he didn't want to disappoint his girlfriend. And they found him in Newark. He had hung himself with a seatbelt. And Billy was devastated. It was a good friend of his, and he just felt horrible that he didn't have anybody to help him. And I just remember saying to Billy, like, aren't you glad you didn't put your family through that? Like, we're just so proud of you, and just keep doing what you got to do to, be well. And in March, he had an IOP, and normally he gets out by 9. He had to be home by 9:30. Like, I was always like, I'm not playing anymore. You get home later than 9:30, and like, I'm not letting you in. Like, I don't want to go through this again. And he texted me, and it was snowing out, and he said, I'm going to be maybe 10 minutes late. Like, don't flip out, don't lock me out. I'm just dropping someone off so their mom doesn't have to drive in the snow. And I was like, all right. But as a mom, you get that feeling in your gut, like, is something going on? Like, is he really telling me the truth? And when he came home, I said to him, how's it going? Are you talking to your sponsor? You're doing your steps? How's everything going? And he said, Mom, I'm in charge of my own recovery. And I'm like, I know, I get it. I just never stop worrying about you. And the next day, my husband was like clearing the cars off with the snow, and I was making lunches for the kids. And I said to my daughter, go up and knock on Billy's door, make sure he's up for work. And she did, but he didn't come down. So I said to my husband, like, well, you better go up there and check on Billy because he's going to be late. So he went up, and then he called me. He's like, Helen, come up here. And I'm like, what's the matter? And when I went in, Billy was turning blue. He was overdosing. And my husband, even being a police officer, was in shock. And I screamed. And that's when he like snapped out of it and ran to call 911. And I remember listening to Billy's chest, and I could hear his heart beating. So I was like, oh, that's like a good sign. But when the police came and when the EMTs came, they didn't carry Narcan. So when they were carrying him down the stairs, my husband turned to me and said, I don't think he's going to make it. And I remember pleading to God in the car, like, please don't take my son. Like, I can't live my life without him. And he was put on life support. But unfortunately, 3 days later, we had to take him off of life support. And then 3 days later from that was my daughter's birthday. And we had to bury him. And so like it like changed my life. I miss him terribly, terribly, terribly. Like my life is just not the same. And I just don't think that you realize how much choices that you make affect other people, because this is going to affect my life and my daughter's life. And, she expected to have her big brother here. And I know that he didn't want to die. He didn't plan on dying that night. He, in fact, friended my daughter on Facebook, and he would never accept her friendship ever. Right. But that night he friended her. So I know he wasn't planning on not waking up the next day. Yeah.
And, geez, Miss Helen.
Yeah.
2 things. Thank you for being so raw and unfiltered, and my prayers to your family.
Thank you.
We have spoken, and I've heard you speak. You've heard me speak in the same circle so many times, and it hits me the same way every time.
Thank you.
Every time. But I don't want to segue into hope, but we need hope right now.
Right.
And you are a co-founder of Parent to Parent Addiction Services.
Yes.
Now, can you please tell everybody listening what that is and what you guys do for the community?
Sure. Thank you. So with your anger and grief, I felt like I had to make change, and I didn't really know how to go about that. I definitely felt judged. This was in 2013, so not a lot of people were talking about it. And even as my husband being a police officer, you feel like police support police. And we didn't get as much I'm sorry for your loss as I would have expected for someone that had just lost a 20-year-old. And so I had a lot of anger. And originally I was like, I'm going down and I'm, going to shout to everybody like my son's important, his life matters. And my husband kind of said to me, you know what, you got to go to the prosecutor. He's the one that oversees all the law enforcement in this county. If you're going to enact change, that's who you have to talk to. And believe it or not, I'm pretty quiet, but like when I'm angry, mama bear, don't stand in my way. And I do feel God has led me, and I opened up the Warren Reporter, and there was like a pills to heroin symposium going on at the county college, and there the prosecutor was going to be on. So I said, let's go down, let's like stand up and confront him. We have to do something. And so we did. And on that panel was another mom sharing about her son's story. And it was the first time I ever had heard anybody else talk about their child, and her son was in recovery. Sure. And afterwards we started talking, and I wanted to learn, more about how I could get involved.
We keep going.
Okay. So I wanted to learn more about what she was doing, what she was involved with. And she invited me to a program called the Coalition for Healthy and Safe Communities. And I started speaking out. And in that talking, we both found out we had mutual friends from Parent to Parent down in South Jersey. Parent to Parent in South Jersey was started over 22 years ago. 3 moms lost their sons to heroin overdoses, and 1 mom had a son that was struggling from alcohol. And I had knew a mom, from there that lost her son. So I said, let me call them. Let's meet with them, see, everything that they have done, because they were involved with Bon Jovi and the governor signing the Good Samaritan law. They had made a lot of change in South Jersey, but in Warren County, we had nothing. We had no services, nowhere to go, nowhere to get help. And so we met with these ladies and saw what they were doing, and they allowed us to bring it up here. And with that, and trying to do everything that we wanted to do, we ended up forming our own 501c3, but honoring them by calling it Parent to Parent. And we started off small. One of the things that we found, because I'm the type of person that if my child or my loved one's going through something, I want to know, like, who do you call? Where do you go? How do you help them? And I went, to various meetings, but you weren't allowed to ask questions. So I would leave the meeting and I wouldn't have any answers that I really wanted to have. And then I went to a therapist and she told me, Google addiction. And I was so distraught. I didn't want to Google. I came to you to tell me this is what you do. So that's kind of what we wanted to do. So we started with a support group just for family members or loved ones, anybody that has a loved one that was facing an addiction issue. And we started growing with that. And then when the loved ones started coming to our meetings, they too wanted answers. They wanted to know, like, what insurance would be accepted, where could they send their child for detox? If they had no insurance, where could they send them? So we slowly made connections with different resources throughout the county and said, we have to start doing this. We have to start offering that type of thing so that we could get people into treatment when they need it. Right. And in talking, we met people as well, to the point that we could text somebody or call somebody and they would be like, yes, have them do an intake, send them in, we'll take them, we have a bed available. And then we started seeing that not everybody had a ride. Like sometimes their family was burnt out and didn't want to drive them, or they didn't have family involved anymore because they were just tired of dealing with their addiction. Right. So we were fortunate enough to get a small grant to pay drivers to drive people to treatment. So we have that now too. And then in Sussex County and at my husband's job, they started a CLEAR program, which is Community Law Enforcement Addiction Recovery. Right. And instead of arresting their way out of it, they knew they couldn't do that. Arresting people wasn't helping people. Jail isn't a rehab. So, we got some towns involved, Blairstown's involved, Washington Township's involved, and Mansfield, and they dedicate the days that we're doing CLEAR that if they do run into somebody, they would drive them to wherever we were at. They would give their information out as much as possible. And we hope that will grow throughout Warren County because we want to offer that all throughout the county. Mm-hmm. But that's how we started. And then we started doing Narcan trainings because, of course, I always felt, and maybe not, but I just felt like if I had Narcan in my home, that it could have given my son a different chance. So we offer Narcan trainings as well to the family members. And if somebody comes to our family group, we make sure if they don't have Narcan that they leave with a Narcan kit, because it's very near and dear and to our hearts. In fact, my co-director's son came up and shared that he was in recovery, but he did overdose, and the reason why he's still standing here today in recovery is because his friend carried Narcan. And so and Debbie didn't even know that. She was like, right. That's the first time I'm hearing that, because you don't know everything that goes on in your loved one's life. But those are just some of the things. And then we have a new program that we're launching called Straight to Treatment, Clear Pathways. And we're so excited, and we praise Jesus for this, because we don't charge anything for anything that we do. And so we run strictly, on donations. And if we get a small grant, that's wonderful too. But we are getting a mobile recovery Hope One van, the Hope, because recovery does happen. And that van is going to have the Narcan, and we're going to have like homeless bags. So if somebody is going to treatment and they need clothing items, we'll have the bags already on the van. So if our driver's available and we can get you into treatment that day, you can go that day. And we're going to be all throughout Warren County. We're going to be launching the middle of April. And so we're so excited. We'll have recovery coaches. We're going to have all kinds of county resources available. We want to have, we want to include some mental health resources. So we're so excited about that. Yeah.
Amazing. I heard that if you need a good male recovery coach, I know a guy.
Yes, and we will need that too. No. Definitely need that. I'm holding you to it. Everybody's watching.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can only give back what was so freely given to us.
Absolutely.
And if that's the small token of my appreciation that I can help you guys out with, I'll be more than happy to.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's absolutely amazing everything that you, Ms. Deb, and Amanda are doing for the community as far as addiction and recovery goes. And I salute you and thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I put the website up. You see the banner. You can go there and you can access all of their services. I'm not going to hold you all day because I know you're a busy woman. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to ask me before we get out of here?
I was trying to think of some good questions, and one is like, what would you say to someone? Because we go into the high schools and we try to talk to the kids about, like we do a not even once program. So we say to them, don't use not even once, but they leave and then they go to college and they're introduced. Like, what do you think we could say to someone that's in their teens or in their college years to deter them from using?
Take every blessing that you have. If you add drugs to that equation, there will be nothing positive to come out of that.
Yeah, that's good.
If you're having a bad day, right, sprinkle some dope on it. And I guarantee you your day's going to get worse. Your day is like, you may instantly gratify whatever it is that you're searching for that moment, but your day is going to get worse.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. Yeah, I like that a lot. And was there any one thing that made you decide to choose recovery?
I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. Like everybody in my family, everybody that was in my life had all these grandiose expectations for me. And here I am just chasing another high in the streets, pushing drugs, doing drugs. And it wasn't what God had intended for me. And at some point, God stepped in on some divine intervention and said, I'm not done with you yet. And he snapped me out of it. And, major blessings to my wife, who, I didn't know anything about recovery or 12-step meetings or anything like that. And I wasn't really a fan at first, but I needed to hear somebody's story that was identifiable to mine. And I did, and I stayed.
Oh, that's awesome.
By God's grace and mercy, you know, in a couple months I'll have 12 years clean.
Oh, that's so great. So great. That's
Absolutely.
wonderful.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
And before we go, to the parents out there, what would you say to them if they were experiencing the beginning stages of what you experienced?
I would say first, don't blame yourself, because we all tend to say, I should have, could have, or I thought I knew what, and we don't know. We only know what we know, and that's nothing when you're
Right,
going through it.
right.
And second, don't wait, because we all tend to think, oh, it's going to go away or it's going to blow over. And like the sooner that you can get a hold of it and that your loved one can get into treatment. And now we know, like, they can try it once and that's it. With fentanyl, you may not get another shot at life. So, don't delay, but do it with love. Always do it with love, because that was I try not to have regrets because I can't change anything, but I do regret, yelling at my son as if it was his choice.
Right.
And nobody chooses to be addicted to anything. So treat it as if your child was, or your loved one was sick with cancer. You're not going to yell at them. You're just going to find out the best treatment for them, and you're going to do it with love. And so that's the best advice I feel like I could give.
Thank you for that.
Oh,
Thank you for that.
thank you.
We have a couple comments that came in throughout while you were sharing, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay.
But I will share them now because I think that everybody needs to hear them as well. Alan Amy, who is his mother, stepped in when my mother passed. We grew up together, and she'd been raising me since I was in diapers. And he said, I am very grateful for you sharing your story on this online platform. There are many parents who will benefit from you sharing your experience and hopefully watch this. Thank you. Prayers to you. David Markle says, thank you for sharing your story, and prayers coming your way. God bless you.
Thank you.
Matthew Skirbo says, God bless you all for all that you do to help others struggling in need of help. Jeff Anchor says, this was amazing. It made me angry, sad, and hopeful. I appreciate your loss, your strength, and your efforts. Thank you both. You hear these kinds of stories too often.
Yes, thank you.
And Kim says, love you, Helen and TJ. Great job. Hey, Kim.
Love you, Kim.
Miss Helen, that is it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you to the utmost. This has been another episode of Spittin with Spitter. Thank everybody that tuned in today. My sponsors, one last time, for all your CBD needs, go to Mom and Pop CBD Shop, 312 Town Center Boulevard over there in Forks Township. Stop going to the gas stations for your CBD, man. Do better. Mom and Pop CBD Shop, 312 Town Center Boulevard. For all your vape needs, go to Lehigh Vape, 822 Nazareth Pike. Tell them TJ sent you. They're the best vape shop in the valley. I said it. I'll co-sign it. You go there, they'll have everything you need. Again, thank you very much. This has been another episode of Spittin with Spitter. Thank you, Helen. I appreciate you. I will be seeing you soon. Have a blessed day. Don't leave you. I'm going to end the show, and then I want one last thing for you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.